Your voice, your opinion, your community. Fact TV, free speech protected.
The following is an independently produced program. The views and opinions expressed are entirely those of the producer and do not reflect those of Falls Area Community Television, its staff, or board of directors. Take a deep breath. Remember this is public access and carry on.
Secrets in the shadows, lost and found. Truth in every echo, loud and clear. Keep on with the long road, no more fear. In the halls of power, whispers grow. Every secret cracked beneath the undertone. Honor stories hidden in the glass. On this long road, in the truth we just.
Welcome to The Long Road. I'm your host, Chris Roberts. And today we're going to talk about budgets. And how do the budgets affect you, me, and a lot of other people. Most people, when it comes to budgets, they may look at how much is the total budget? Or is there anything in there that's going to benefit me or not? Well, when you stop and look at it, it's only a small group of people that affect your budget, your household budget. There's 100 senators, 435 congressmen, 400 representatives in New Hampshire, 24 senators in New Hampshire, 15 people on the city council, and 9 people on the school budget. It's really a small number in a country that's about 320, 330 million people. Even in the city of Keene, about 23,000, 15 for the city council and 9 for the school board. The 400 for the state house, that's a total aberration compared to all the other bodies around. The 24 in the state house is pretty much, as senators are pretty much in line, or in some cases smaller. But again, 24 people out of 1.5 million. And what they don't want to say and should be said, every single person has biases. And every single person's view of the world is based on those biases. Every single person has a personal makeup which they base what they think is best for them and their families and what they think is best for others or best for the people that elect them. Well, all those are correct, except when you go and think every single elected official or all elected officials want to do what is the greater good. Okay, you may have a school board made up of people who want to reduce taxes. You can say, well, less than 3,000 kids from Keene go to public school, but we got hundreds and hundreds of people, especially elderly, who have trouble paying their property tax or getting food on the table or paying for medical. So, what is the greater good? Excuse me. You've got people who says, well, beautifying downtown Keene is really, really good for the businesses and everything downtown and extract in bringing people into Keene. But then you got a high poverty rate. You got a poverty rate that's higher in Keene than the state of New Hampshire. You got an income, a medium household income, lower in Keene than the state of New Hampshire. So what is the greater good? Taking care of downtown, making it look pretty, or taking care of the citizens that are in need in Keene? Same way up at the federal level. Same way at the state level. First thing is, who is their loyalty to? Is the loyalty to the people that elected them, or is their loyalty to something else? For example, the Republicans, are their loyalty to the President of the United States, Donald Trump, are they required to do everything Donald Trump says? Some people were saying no and saying I can't stay part of this because I represent, for example, the people of North Carolina. Then you got the senator from Alaska who says this bill is really, really, really bad and it sucks and the House should be voting it down. But she changed the vote when they said, oh no, we'll put $25 million or million or billion, but it's hard to say, just for Alaska. I think it was just for Alaska and Hawaii. Screw the other 48 states. So you can say her loyalty was to the state of Alaska. Okay? But wouldn't the greater good being not so easily bought off and voting something that was completely against her conscience so it could pass, and then turn around and say, don't vote for this piece of crap? So goes back and forth, back and forth. For example, City Council last week, or the week before, we had to vote on the city budget. Well, there was a number, for example, Arts Alive, which brings in a lot of money. They were put in a predicament. One source of funding was cut. Then another source of funding from the federal government says, basically, if they followed it, really the only people Arts Alive would be supporting would be white males. And they said, no, we're going to stand up and we're not going to lower our standards for money. So we only gave them $500 a year. and then they asked for an increase to 10,000. So we have one city council member says, hey, yeah, we'll give Arts Alive thousands more, but it has to come out of the Keene Senior Center. You know, a place where seniors can get some companionship, places where seniors can eat, be safe, an emergency happens, bingo, not falling down in the house and can't get up. So lucky that one was voted down. Then we had another one. Then we went to the third one. And it took us about an hour arguing back and forth, back and forth. So Arts Alive went from 500 to 10,000 bucks. The community kitchen got $4,000, $4 or maybe $5,000 extra. The senior center got $1,200 or $1,250, and the kids collaborative got $500. So it came out to something like $16,250. We argued almost an hour, and it barely passed. We had a budget hearing, I think, 5 nights. Not too many city council members showed up, and they didn't say much. So in the end, an $81 million budget, and we argued over an hour about $16,250. We argued about $500 for Kids Collaborative to help kids make up the learning loss they would have got from the houses they live in, the families they live in. $1,200 to help seniors to be safe and at least improve their quality of life. Then $5,000 more for the community kitchen. So that comes out to $14 extra a day to feed people who have food insecurity or really can't afford much food. $14 a day. Kids Collaborative, $1.50 a day. The Senior Center, $3.50 a day. Arts Alive, $30 a day. Look at a lot of things that happen downtown that Arts Alive helps brings to the city so the citizens of the city can enjoy. The reason I'm emphasizing this is all the big things in an $81 million budget, and we were arguing over $16,250 on quality of life issues. Because we had people who says, yeah, quality of life issues are important, but they're important for me, but not for the general public. I want to benefit about quality of life issues funded by the taxpayers that benefit me and the people in my social circle. Excuse me. Now, let's go to the state budget. I was on the State House in 2011 when the New Hampshire Retirement Fund was one of the worst funded in the state. We were having police officers and fire officials getting paid more in retirement than they were due making while working. You go, that's not possible. No, the system allowed you, says what you will do is, oh, I'm getting ready to retire, so I will work a bunch of overtime, I'll work extra duties, all this stuff to bring money in, and then I'll sell back my, some cases, sick leave, or I'll sell back my vacation. And so that all added up. And I think there was one police officer on the coast that got about $300,000 more than he was getting working full time. Because in theory, police officers, especially senior officers, never get sick. Never get the opportunity to take vacation time. So what they did was to help fund it, they says because it took 5 years to get vested. If if you were not vested on such a date in 2011, you would have to go 10 years instead of 5 years. So, but if you're vested on 2011 and you retire after a certain point, there's like health increases in health care and all that stuff would stop. So that's why in 2011, a lot of teachers, a lot of firemen, policemen, a lot of them retired so they could get the max benefit. Well, there's about 1,500 police, firemen, basically tier 2 first responders. On that 2011 date, they did not have 5 years to be vested. So the unions had been going, they supported the governor, and the governor said she would work to get that back. So the Senate had a problem with it. The House voted for it. So the governor says she would veto the bill if it didn't contain. Okay. Now, they didn't get everything they wanted, but the small part they got, what they got in the bill budget, is going to cost $262 million. This year alone, $42 million out of this year's state budget has to be paid in the fiscal year 26-27, has to be paid in the retirement. Okay, instead of before, a couple of things, it's going to be based on their highest 5 years of salary years. Okay, they will not be able, any unused sick time will not be included in pension calculations, and it was raised. So, first responders are capped, so they can no longer get, they will be limited. It was 105. They will be limited to $145,000 a year retirement pay. About $110,000 a year higher than the median state of New Hampshire retirement pay. Okay. But everybody in group 1 who was not vested by that date do not get the same break. It's, well, sorry, screw you. You didn't have enough political clout to help the governor get elected. So now you have $262 million to help 1,500 people. Well, you can't moan at them. They tried to get it back, and the governor gave it to them. So now you got a governor who is paybacking this group that helped her get elected, who goes and says $262 million for this small group is far more important to me than Medicaid, food stamps, education, whole bunch of stuff. So her number one priority was get elected, and her number one priority now is to get reelected. What's in the budget? A lot of people don't even realize what's in the budget. Things get rolled up. Some of these things, look at it. People, the small group, they have such a paranoia that all the elections are fraud. Okay? Patty Little has run elections for years and years. She's retired, but I have complete faith in her. Okay? It is basically impossible to have a fraud-free election. Okay? I can show my ID, all this other kind of stuff, and I say I moved into Keene last month. Register to vote, I get to vote. But wait a minute. I don't live in Keene, but I'm just hanging around for the month so I can vote for Keene because my vote's going to matter more voting here than if I vote in New York or Connecticut or New Jersey or Massachusetts. That happens. Or the boss helps convince a lot of people at work why it's important for their jobs to vote a certain way. So, also House Bill 1613 enables towns and cities to opt out of deployable, accessible voting machines under certain circumstances. Oh man, you know those people in wheelchairs and things like that just can't get up out of their wheelchair and stand? Oh, maybe a lot of people in the community in wheelchairs are Republicans. Maybe a lot of the people in wheelchairs are Democrats. Do we come up with a reason? Create a new public notice requirement that municipalities with a population of 10,000 or more must follow before issuing tax bills after reassignment, and prohibit school facilities from providing shelter for certain immigrants. So, which means if we have a really bad storm or an event and we're using one of the school facilities, you know, like we had the flood or we had the problem with Hurricane Irene. So now someone is going to be there to have to check for citizenship. What paperwork is going to be required and who's going to do it? And you know what? Well, we got this machine that basically everything keeps going in, it's zeroed out before you go, and within 15 minutes, stuff is posted. But there's some people that don't like it. And I go, you know what? I have no trust in machines. I want my vote, my ballot hand counted. So, hey, if there's 15, 20 of us, my ballot is hand counted, you're going to have a delay. Another one, parents and legal guardians will have the ability to go to the library and say, Chris Roberts is 17, he's still a minor, and I know he checks out books, so I want a list of every single book Chris Roberts checked out. I've done everything possible, and we prevented Chris from reading Catcher in the Rye or Killing a Mockingbird. And then Chris went to the library and checked out To Kill a Mockingbird. So, does this mean we're on the way to the public library? We'll have age restricting on every book? Are they going to put To Kill a Mockingbird or Catcher in the Rye in a special area that you have to show your age before you can go in? Or, you know, if Chris wants to read Kill a Mockingbird, there's nothing prevent me to go to the library 10 or 15 times for 30 minutes, 45 minutes to read the book in the library. People do read books in the library without checking them out. Keno. It used to be, if you wanted Keno, the city or the town's residents had to go and vote and say, we wanted Keno. Or their elected officials, we want Keno. But, the state had to come up with $42 million. So the state says, no. Every community in New Hampshire will have Keno unless they explicitly vote not to have Keno. Mandatory annual verification of the vote and list checklist and directs the Secretary of State's office to develop any forms necessary for re-registering of eligible voters moved from the checklist. This is kind of like ICE. Oh, you look African, you look Asian, you look Mexican, you look Middle Eastern. Yep, we're going to pick you up and deport you. Oops, I'm an American citizen. Oh, okay, well, let's you go. So now we have an annual verification. And it goes, hey, anybody seen Chris? Nope. Okay, we'll take Chris off. Chris goes to vote, and he goes, well, you're not on the checklist. I go, why? I vote every year. Oh, we haven't seen you. Oh, I have another place out of state, which I go 4 years out of the year. This is my primary residence in Keene. This is where I pay my taxes. This is where my car. So now you'll have to get a form from the Secretary of State to get you on. And so, you know how many people are just going to say screw it and just walk out? And so, those are some of the things. And when I go through just those small things, where is the public good? When we say the public good, we're talking about the vast majority of the people in there. The public good. Now we're talking about the public good in something that's going to affect the quality of life, taxpayers. Taxpayers are now, the Keene School Board is now have to go into critical mode and have to make some serious decisions. Okay. 3 days ago, the president, basically trying to get back at California, and since he can't pick one over the other, says, I know Congress gave $6.2 billion for K-12 education funding and stuff like that. But I've decided to put a hold on it. Okay? Which means he would have to go back to Congress and have Congress vote to rescind. So, for example, with California, It's 810 million or 16% of their budget, education budget. District of Columbia, 25 million, 21%. Let's pick, okay. So it's $6.6,190,379. What does that mean? Let's go to New Hampshire. Okay. The president has decided to withhold 25,089,364 from the state of New Hampshire, or 17.2% of the state of New Hampshire's education budget. Almost 21% of Vermont. Okay. What does that mean? Okay, migrant education. Because right now, anybody who shows up at the school, we have to educate. And it costs money. So that doesn't affect New Hampshire because New Hampshire only gets $66,570 compared to, for example, California gets almost $121 million for migrant education. So, like, for example, New York. Come on, New York. Oh. It's covered up. So when New York had all the migrants going to Massachusetts, to New York City, other ones going to Massachusetts, other ones going to Chicago, the law required all of them to educate. Because New Hampshire had the low set of migrants, they only got $66,000. But Alaska does pretty good because they get a good senator. They got $21 million for migrant education. Washington got $37 million. Texas, 20. Nebraska, 6. Kentucky, 7. Kansas, 6. Idaho, 7. Georgia, 9. Hawaii, 3. Colorado, 7. So it really goes. It matters how good your politicians are, what they're going to deliver. But here's some of the other problems. Supported education instructions. That's mostly for kids who come from broken families, families with low quality education, things like that, to help teach and educate kids to help break the poverty cycle. So when you have a child that's 5 years old showing up in kindergarten, doesn't know his alphabet, doesn't know the numbers, the colors, a whole bunch of things, then you have another child whose parents are college educated or high school educated. They've gone to good daycare and all that kind of stuff. Preschool, they could have thousands and thousands of more words in their vocabulary than the basic words this other child is. Part of it is to have the child catch up, But part of it on the selfish, you don't want to have the kid on the special ed and have to pay a classroom or or special ed teacher for the next 12 years to help this child. Well, 10 million is gone. Support students in academic enrichment, 6 million is gone. 21st century learning centers. You know, for a lot of families around here, their only access to the internet is their phone. Or they might get a cheap tablet from Walmart, you know, one of those $70 or $80 tablets for the kids to play on, but only when their parents are home, use it as a hotspot. Okay? English second language. It was 1 million. That million is not there. Here in Keene, we've had to hire a second teacher for English second language. Like California had $157 million to get English as a second language. Illinois, Chicago and everything, they had 30 million. Minnesota 11 million. New Jersey 28 million. Then New Hampshire, like I said, $25 million. So services are going to have to be cut. Some people may lose their jobs. Is that for some people's private interest, or is that for some people's loyalty to the president, loyalty to their party, showing little to no loyalty to the people elected him? Okay, let's go Medicaid. There's all kinds of numbers being thrown out. 10 million, 16 million, 18 million. Which is true. The Congressional Budget Office said 10.9 million people will lose access to Medicaid by 2034 if there's no changes. Where the other number comes from, 5.1 million people who get a tax credit, quote unquote, to help them buy private insurance under the, I'll make it easier, the Obamacare plan. So a bunch of these 5.1 million people will no longer get the tax credit, and they won't be able to use the tax credit to buy health insurance. So the total is about 16 million, up to about 16 million people could lose access. Okay, you have 10.9 million people that possibly could lose access. Okay? But some of those people will find jobs or will do other things. They won't be losing access. They will be gaining health care other places. So the people who have the tax credits, they may get jobs, or they may give up other things to make sure they stay on the health care. Okay, here's some of the things that people don't want to pay attention to. In rural places like Swansea and Keene, mostly all of Cheshire County, for example, the counties up north, in a lot of places in Middle America and South, these rural areas, small towns, 40% of the children living in those towns around the country get health care through Medicaid. That's right. 40% of those children get their health care through Medicaid. Do you know 1 out of every 10 veterans, 1.6 million veterans, get their health care through Medicaid? I mean, Medicaid, yeah, Medicaid. And they go, why? That's not true. You have to be service connected with 10% or more, or you have to be below a certain income that's adjusted from where you are to be able to get into the VA healthcare system. So, about 8 million veterans don't have access to VA healthcare. There's 5,500 veterans, about 6% in the state of New Hampshire, who have to use Medicaid to get health care. You know, the president is talking about the Social Security thing, how you're going to get a $6,000 tax deduction, not a tax credit, in the Senate bill. That's a promise I want to keep. Okay, if you're single on Medicare, and you make $25,000 or less, so say you make $2,000 a month, you don't pay taxes. If you're married, yeah, it's $32,000. You don't pay taxes. Okay? But there's a couple of tricks to keep the cost down. Oh, if you're 62, 63, or 64, and you're on Social Security, you don't get anything. You got to be 65 and above. If you're a widow on Social Security, nah, you don't get anything. Almost 50% of people, of the 52.6 million people that collect Social Security retirement, don't pay any taxes at all. Oh, my wife works, I work with collect Social Security. Hey, $12,000 extra deduction. Oh, that could give me about $2,500 extra. But, you know, if you're 20, you're getting 21, no, 2,000, oh, you don't get extra. You get nothing. You know, the president well, his talker out there is good thing she's not Pinocchio because she'd be all through every TV screen in the country, says despite the fact that the Congressional Budget Office before the Senate said that it should become about $3.4 trillion increase over the expected budget deficit. The White House says it will have zero impact. Zero impact. The White House is saying this humongous tax cut that really benefits the top 20% of the people will cause the economy to overheat so much, producing so much, it would create so much additional tax revenue, not only would have zero impact on the budget, that it will cause it to go down. Well, here's the thing. They use the word deficit and debt interchangeable. They use it so much it doesn't really, it confuses people, or people just accept it. For example, they can go and say, President Obama was so effective, look how much he reduced the deficit from President Trump's deficit. President Obama reduced the deficit so much over President Bush. Okay. So it's kind of like me going, last year, when I look at all my income, I look at my expenses, I go, holy crap. I had to put $1,000 on my credit card. This year, I'm doing really good, and I only have to put $500 on my credit card. So I reduced my deficit by 50%. But wait a minute. I put $1,000 on my credit card 2 years ago, and I put $500 on my credit card this year. So I have $1,500 on my credit card. But I got a really good deal on my credit card, and I only paid 20%. And so they're saying I get to put $200 more on my debt just because of interest. But now, I thought this year I was only going to have $500, but now I'm $700 in deficit. Oh, this is all really confusing. I'm paying down my deficit, but my debt is going up. Okay? That's what they're talking about. Two different things. The Biden's deficit was almost $2 trillion. Trump's deficit this year is a little bit more than $2 trillion. So if they use this whole gimmick and everything and say next fiscal year's deficit is $1.5 trillion, they can go claim they reduce the deficit by 25%. Well, Biden added $2 trillion to the debt. Trump is going to add $2 trillion to the debt. We're at $38 trillion. The Congressional Budget Office says over the next 30 years, we're putting out 30 years, so just think you got a 1-year-old child. By that time, that child's 31 and having a family of his own. Between now and 30 years from now, we, the American taxpayers, will have paid $78 trillion on the debt. $78 trillion on the debt. And the debt could be over $100 trillion. So look at your big, beautiful bill and realize if you're 40, next 30 years, your federal government is spending $78 trillion, while the president says no impact.